Hello, everybody. It is Mark here from Mark and Adam. Adam is not here. Don't know where he is. Don't know what he's doing. He's at his house, and you're sitting here with me. And today we're going to talk about saturation, right? If you ask most people, "Hey, what's saturation?" they'll probably give you a quick answer and say, "Oh, it's distortion." If all you think saturation is and what it can do for you and your production is add some distortion to whatever you have going on, you're missing out on so much of what saturation is. It's more than just distortion. And today we're going to talk about what saturation is, what it isn't, how to apply it. We'll look at a couple of different plugins that you can use for your saturation, and we'll also learn some quick little tricks and tips that if you add them to your productions right now and you start applying them, you're going to get a massive benefit, and I guarantee you, right, guarantee you that they'll really help with what you're doing as far as your music production goes. Now, the best way to take a look at saturation is to compare it to EQ, right? When we have EQ, we're controlling tone, and that's what saturation does as well. The difference is, with EQ, the only control that we have is over the signal that is there, right? The difference with saturation is that we can actually add harmonics to the signal that we're working with. EQ does not do that. So if we look here, and I'm going to turn, I have a track here that we're going to work, it's just a vocal track, right? By the absolutely fantastic Sarah Carmosino, who we did a song called Shadow with. Make sure you click and listen to that song, watch the video. Sarah's an incredible vocalist, and we were very happy to be able to do that track with her and have her sing on it. If you look at EQ, I've turned this track down right now because I want you just to focus on the EQ. When the signal comes in, right, I can boost the low end, I can boost some of the mids, I can create like a nice little shelf here and boost the highs. But if someone tells you that they're going to add highs to the with an EQ, that's just wrong. You're not adding anything. You're just boosting what's already there. And it's a very important distinction. Don't at me and put in the comments, "Oh, Mark, that's semantics." It's not semantics. You're not adding anything when you boost the highs on an EQ. You're just boosting what's there. The difference with saturation is that we can actually add to that sound, right? We can actually add to the signal that we're working with saturation. EQ can't do that. EQ is limited in that way, where saturation is not. Adding the harmonics, adding warmth, adding brightness, adding to the signal is one of the massive benefits of saturation. And if you understand this, it's really going to help you with your work, right? Now, saturation, we can also determine where we're adding these harmonics, right? Do we want to add to the highs? Do we want to add to the lows? Do we want to add in the mids? Do we want to add to the entire signal, right? We can control this with saturation. Now let's talk about some plugins that you can use, right? The Ableton Saturator is pretty good. It's not spectacular, but it's good. It's serviceable. If this is all you have and you don't want to go out and spend money on other plugins, or you don't want to steal other plugins, this is fine. This will work for you, right? The Ableton Saturator. The saturator that I like is the Decapitator, which is from Soundtoys. We are not sponsored by Soundtoys, but I love Soundtoys stuff. You can see I have like the entire effects rack here. I love it, right? We're not sponsored, but Soundtoys, if you love that we love you and you want to do something, get a hold of us, right? We would love that. You guys are fantastic. I love their saturator. This is what we're going to use today to talk about some of this stuff. You can also use like FabFilter Saturn 2. That's an incredible saturator that you can just do so much with, right? There's a lot of good ones out there on the market. Find one you like, just like with any other plugin, and really get to know it. This is what we're going to work with today, and it's fairly simple. Now, we do have presets, right? We have presets, and any one that you have is going to have these different presets in there. Those are fine. I kind of don't like just slapping on a preset. I like kind of learning about the plugin and learning how to do it myself. But presets are good to get you there. You can see what they're doing to the sound, and you can add to them and all this kind of stuff. So presets are always there. Really what we're looking for with saturation is we're just going to pick where we want to add some saturation. So if we're looking at the lows on this one, it's called, dark. The highs are going to be labeled bright, and what we're looking to add is on the lows we'll add warmth to the signal, right? If we're working on the highs, then we're going to be adding some brightness, some sparkle, some shimmer with saturation if we're working there. So basically all we're going to do is decide where we're going to add the saturation and then use the drive. Very simple. The output gain, we'll talk about that. This decapitator from Sound Toys has a very accurate auto gain. A lot of plugins, the auto stuff, the auto makeup and stuff on compressors or saturators isn't always accurate. This one really is. This is why I like it as well, is that it gets you right there, and so it's very quick and easy to fine tune it if you need to. But most of the time, to be honest, I don't even need to fine tune it. It's very accurate, and I'll demonstrate that as well. If you would like to see more in-depth tutorials on these specific plugins, either in comparison to each other or separately, send us a message and we could make a video of that, right? Anyway, let's get into it right now. I'll start by adding a little bit of brightness to this. We'll start it very low. We'll start it with no saturation on it, and then I'm going to overkill it so that we can definitely hear some distortion, and we'll work our way back and see what it's doing to that signal on this vocal.
So don't get me started on anybody else. I'm under your spell. Always overthinking. Hold on to me tight and pull me out to the deep end. Barely breathing. So unbreakable. Keeping an eye and circling like an animal. You won't let me go.
Without.
This part of me.
And with.
Is waging a war, and it turns out I'm the enemy. I'll never be free. I hear you in the night. It's when you come alive. Screaming on the inside, you're inside.
So you can see there, right? We're adding a little bit of brightness, and I have a funny story for you that I want to tell you. And this really gets in. You can see how easy that is to use, right? And what it really adds to that. It really brightened up the high end of Sarah's voice there, right? When we started making music and it started getting pretty decent, and we decided that we wanted to start shopping it around and see if we could get it signed and released, the number one piece of feedback that we received back was, this needs more warmth, or you need more warmth here, or really need more warmth. And I'm thinking, warmth? What the hell is warmth? And right away, as any kind of producer who's short in the tooth would do, I just started adding layers to stuff. Like, it needs warmth. Let me add some warmth, right? And I tried to do that with layers, and especially on bass. Like, if I had some really low end stuff that needed warmth, I would add like a mid-range bass to that. And I already had a whole separate, thing going on for mid-range bass, stuff happening. But for some reason I thought, if I add mid-range bass to my lows and mix it into my low end extra, that was going to add warmth, and it doesn't, right? For some of our saws and super saws and our synth layers that we do, I was sitting there, you know, and you're building this and you've got a few layers and you're thinking, still missing something. I need more on the high end, or I need something on the low end, and you've tried to EQ that in and it still doesn't sound right. You know, you're trying to add to it with EQ, which we learned that you cannot do that. You can't do it. Then your first reaction is add more layers. And we had synths where like the drop synth had like 12 layers on it, right? Really what we needed was a little bit of saturation. That's it. We needed to add a little more harmonics. We needed some brightness, some sparkle on the top end. We needed some warmth on the low end. And rather than using saturators, because we didn't know how they worked, or we were just ignorant and stupid and didn't know, I have no problem telling you we were stupid. We didn't know what it was. It's a great tool and we didn't know how to use it. What we did was we just used more layers. And if we thought it got us there, then we were happy. But if it didn't get us there, then you start rethinking your whole thing and you're like, all right, well, maybe the synth is wrong. Maybe I need a new kick because my kick's not working well with the bass. And you know, you scrap it, you go back to the beginning, you start searching through your kick samples, or you start trying to create new kicks, and you start going back to your bass layer on your synth and then trying to re-add a bunch more other layers, and they don't work. So it's just a vicious cycle when all we had to do was something like this.
So don't get me started on anybody else. I'm under your spell.
Boom, instant
Always
brightness.
overthinking. Hold on to me tight and pull me out to the deep end.
There you go, right? A little bit of brightness, boom, there you go. Oh, but now we need some warmth, right? The vocal needs some warmth, right? Sarah's vocals are good. She doesn't really, we don't really need much warmth there. Again, all on this dry vocal, you can see there it's a dry vocal. The only thing that's on there is some very light compression from when she recorded it. There's not much on there. I like dry vocals to be pretty dry so I can really dig into them. But let's play with the warmth now, and we'll add a ton of distortion and work our way back, right?
So don't get me started on anybody else.
Heavy.
I'm under your spell. Always overthinking. Hold on to me tight and pull me out to the deep end.
Yeah, it doesn't need much.
Barely breathing. So unbreakable.
So there you go. It's very, very simple to use, right? But now, here's something else that I really, really love, is that we can use this little trick and keep in mind the relationship that our decapitation, our saturation has with EQ, right? This will really open our eyes to, look, do I want to EQ first, or do I want to add some saturation first and then EQ again? It really changes and opens up the way that we're going to EQ our signal. And that can be a fantastic trick that you can use, because remember now, we're not looking at the EQ like we're adding things. We're just going to boost. And when we add, we're going to use saturation to do that. So it really gives us a ton of options. And that's a really fantastic trick that you can do, is use saturation in concert with your EQ. Now, volume control when it comes to saturation. Again, just like with anything, compression, any other tool that we're using for effects, we want to make sure that we're not being tricked by changes in volume. So I talked before about the output gain on the Decapitator plugin specifically. The auto is really good. Right, the auto is really good. There are a lot of tools where the auto control is really messed up, and you do get a lot of changes in volume. We always want no change in volume when we've added an effect. So whether I have a lot of distortion, whether I have just a little bit of warmth added, a little bit of brightness added, I don't want to change the volume. So let's take a listen to this. I will start on kind of the higher range again. I'll add some drive in there, right? And then we'll pay attention to the output, and we'll make sure we leave it to where when I bypass the saturator, we're not getting changes in volume. It's very, very important that you learn how to do this, and this will be fantastic for your work, right? Here we go.
So don't get me started on anybody else. I'm under your spell. Always overthinking. Hold on to me tight and pull me out to the deep end. Barely breathing. So unbreakable. Keeping an eye and circling like an animal.
So there we go. We're getting that little bit of brightness there on Sarah's vocal, but we're not changing levels, right? Our volume's not jumping all around, right? That's really going to help you in the end when it comes to actually mixing the entire track down. It's just going to, if you do this on every single channel you have, make sure that whatever plugins you're using are not affecting the volume. You're going to have a much easier time mixing, and it's important to mention this with every different effect that we're using because it's something that many producers miss. Another way that you can use this saturator, you see me have the dry wet pinned, and then I'm sitting here and I'm adding in drive. You can do it the opposite. You can pin the drive and just add some dry signal in with the wet and do it that way. I don't typically do it that way. I'd rather use the drive and just keep the effects, keep the mix knob pinned at wet. However you want to do it, that's fine. And get creative with saturation. If you want heavy distortion and you want like a Miley Cyrus or Billie Eilish type distortion on a vocal, do that, right? Add some of that distorted harmonics to your vocal and get that, and you can automate that as well, right, where you get a nice clean tone like we're working with Sarah here, and then maybe towards the end of the hook or the beginning of a drop or whatever you're doing, add a really distorted part to really change it up. Once you understand how this works and what it's doing to your signal, you can be so creative with saturation. It can really, really help, right? Look, I've been there. I've been at the point even when I first started getting into saturation where it was like, slap it on, add a little bit of distortion, it's good. Not good. Learn your tools. Learn your tools. Learn your tools, right? Learn your tools. You want tricks? I have another trick for you. Here's a good trick. What we can do, and we're going to work with this this sub bass here, right, is you can add some high end to a low bass, and that can get really, really fancy and really cool. If I'm working with this 808 here, just turn that up so you can hear it. Right, if I'm working with this and I'm like, you know what, I'd like to really kind of brighten up the top end there and add something to that top end, I'm not going to put that mid bass like I talked about before. I'm not going to try and add something on a layer. What I'm going to do is just add some saturation. So look, we're working on the high end of this really low frequency in this 808, and we're just going to add some high end to that. And look, without it, and this is obviously overkill, but you can hear the difference. Without it, I mean, that's a good 808, but if we just want to add a little shimmer to it, just because it fits with what we're doing, then we can do that. If we want some distortion on the low end, now we're getting crazy. That sounds like a completely different bass. We've added harmonics to the low of this sub bass, and it totally has changed it. We've added a ton of distortion to it, and listen to what that distortion does, the rumble it gives. Fantastic. Instead of sitting there and trying to figure out what layers we can add to get that rumble, to get that distortion on the 808, clicking through 808 samples, creating multiple 808s in Serum or Silent or whatever we're using, add some saturation, right? Add some saturation. That's all you need. So here's the deal. Here's some things to remember, right? Are you trying to boost what's already there? Then EQ is what you need. If you're trying to add some harmonics to what's already there, saturation is the key. Always, 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 when you have something you like and you need to add to it, always add saturation before you start adding layers. If you add saturation and you still feel like you're missing something, that's a good signal that maybe you need another layer. Right? But don't just start layering everything up, stacking layers everywhere, stacking layers, right? This is crazy. If your synth or your bass or your vocals have 14 layers, that doesn't mean they're good. And here's the thing, if you're whatever you're working on has 14 layers, it's probably not good. Cut that back, add in some saturation. If you still need more, then maybe you need a layer. Add in some saturation. If you still need more, then add a layer. I hope this video helps. If you have any questions on saturation, how we use it, how you can apply it to what tracks you already are working on, just let us know. Send us a message in the comments. Get us on Instagram at Mark and Adam Beat. Facebook is at Mark and Adam Beat, and our website is markandadambeat.com. It's in the description. Click on the links. Thank you very much for watching this. If you have any ideas on videos you'd like to see us do in the future, again, let us know. We're here for you. We're very happy to be making music together, and part of what we do is we want to share that and share what we do with others. And thank you. Hope everybody's doing well, and we will talk to you soon.